You've tamed the voices in your head. You've put your courage to the test. Laid all your doubts to rest.
Hi everyone, welcome from your Intuition Queen to a new episode of Intuitive Queens podcast. Today I have the pleasure to have with me Michelle A.Dowell, who is a Metaphysical Minister, a family constellation facilitator, and a clinical hypnotist. Hi Michelle, welcome.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me here, Mara.
I'm really good. I'm very happy to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you.
Hey, so you do a lot of things, and you do a lot of things to help people to feel better, women to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're doing what you do because of your personal experience, and that's how your intuition kind of played a role in your life.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your story from you if you could share it with us.
Yeah. So, gosh, where do I start? Okay, so I'm a metaphysical minister, a constellation facilitator, or a family constellation facilitator, and a clinical hypnotist. And those three tools are tools that I use to hold space and work with women as they connect the dots from their mother wound to issues in their life. So issues in their relationships, their finances, their career, their fertility, their parenting, all kinds of ways that our adult life is affected or influenced by the way that we were mothered, whether we were mothered really well, whether we were undermothered, or whether we were overmothered. All of that is going to influence how we orientate and respond to the world as we grow up. So a little bit of my story. I always say, there's a lot of talk right now of ACEs scores, and it's adverse childhood experiences, right? So there's a test out there that asks questions, those 10 questions, it really assesses how much trauma you experienced as a child. And so if out of 10 questions, I scored a 9. And so my childhood was spent with a lot of trauma, a lot of separation. I was a foster child. I was the daughter of an addict. I think my mother diagnosed mental illness. And so I spent my childhood really kind of going to and fro and not really understanding what it meant to have a safe and secure upbringing and childhood. And so I married extremely early. I married when I was 14 and I had a baby when I was 14. Yeah, I was pretty young. And then I had another baby when I was 15 and then 19. And I married my children's father, and we got divorced when I was 19. So from there, I just kind of started my life as this young woman who was divorced from her husband. My children stayed with their father when we divorced, because I didn't really have the infrastructure to take care of them. You know, he had a big family and they helped him, and I did not. I was literally on my own. And that shaped a lot of where I am now. So I kind of set out, made it on my own, made a really great career for myself in real estate. Had, my kids, that relationship was really frustrated with their dad, and we had a lot of struggles and a lot of battles, and we did not co-parent very well. Actually, we really sucked at co-parenting, and there were long periods of times where I didn't see my kids, partly his fault, partly my fault. Looking back on it, it was just the journey that we walked. And so, here I am, I'm 45. I have ended my career in real estate a few years ago, and I decided that I wanted to do something that really embodied the trauma that I had been through, the healing that I had experienced, and where could I take that and do something really meaningful in my life. So a few years ago, I started shifting out of my real estate finance career and shifting into the holistic world. I started with learning, when I went to school for about a year and learned advanced hypnosis techniques. And I graduated with about 300 hours of clinical hypnosis under my belt. So I started my private practice as a clinical hypnotist, and, doing all the stuff that, normal hypnotists do, weight loss, stop smoking, all that kind of stuff. But there was a piece of me that really wanted to work with women and really wanted to help them work through some of the similar issues that I had been through. And I didn't really have a language for it at that time, right? I knew that I had been through a lot of trauma. I knew that there were tools. I didn't want to go back to school to be a psychologist because that just wasn't my route, but I do and have always really leaned into the holistic side of healing. So fast forward, I came across this book called, I thought I had it, I don't. Came across a book by Mark Wolin called It Didn't Start With You. And that just kind of led me down this path to where I found my mentor and my teacher that taught me family mapping and family constellation facilitation. And so now I employ all three of those tools. And the niche I work solely in is mother wound healing. And so all of that, I guess what I could say is when I was in my finance career, my intuition told me I was not satisfied. This was not the career. This was not the path for me. There was another path for me. And I finally, and really started, it happened when we moved to Texas. And I told myself, and I made it really clear that I was going to shift at that time. And I made a choice to listen to my intuition, and I could not be happier. What I do now brings a lot of personal satisfaction. I'm walking in my purpose. And when you walk in your purpose, the other pieces of your life just kind of start to fall in place. And so listening and understanding that intuitive nudge to just trust and to walk in my purpose was kind of the starting point of it. But working in the energy field, working with what we call the knowing field, or the field, as we like to call it as constellators, really is working in that intuitive, energetic space that holds the story of your family. And we work in that space to really shift the story hold internally so that you can resolve the issues going on. And specifically, like I said, I deal specifically with the mother wound in that. My intuition guides me and has guided me through my life into the work that I do, and now how it helps me to hold space for clients.
Oh, this is such an interesting story, and I have a few questions for you because
sure.
it's I love what you're doing because I think it's so important. I've done family constellations myself, and it just opens up things that you can never really do by yourself, and you really understand a lot of things about you and your family. You become more compassionate and more understanding. All that, but we'll get to that point. The question that I want to ask you is, I assume that you've been going on with your life a little bit in survival mode because of the way your childhood was and your teenage years and all the story with your kids and your ex-husband. But you also talked about listening to your intuition. How did you get out of that situation, and what made you start listen? What made you be like, maybe I should do something different?
That's a good question. I think that I'm really privileged, and I think that I'm really fortunate in a few things. I've known my whole life that, or I have felt, excuse me, I felt my whole life that I have had, I guess for lack of a better word, like this calling or this that was bigger than where I was. And it's really hard to explain because I can't really pinpoint the origin of it, right? But where I was really privileged and really fortunate is that for my entire life, even through the trauma as a child, I've been really privileged and fortunate to have access to resources. So I've been in therapy since I was a kid. I always had access to services that could help me through that process. I never held the belief that going to a therapist or that getting help was somehow made me less than, or somehow made me broken, or some of the other stigma that carries that going to therapy or getting, emotional help can carry. It's just always been a part of my life. And so I think because I've always had that foundation, that settling into the trauma and accepting it as is, or settling into the effects of the trauma, or settling into survival mode really wasn't, it wasn't something that I ever felt was the end game for me. Like I always knew that there was a way through. And I recognize that not everybody has that experience because unless you have access to resources, your reality is just my life is the way that it is. And so you have to have access to resources. If there's stigma around that in your family, in your culture, with your circle of friends, with, you know, whoever you spend your time with, it makes it a little bit harder. I didn't have that block or that, you know, that stumbling or that wall. So I feel fortunate in that. That doesn't mean that I didn't operate in survival mode. I think for most of my life, until I was, I'm going to say until I was about 35, I was operating in survival mode, because I didn't, even though I knew that healing was there, I wasn't actively doing healing. I was just kind of going through the motions. I was making good money. I had decent, you know, friendships. You know, I had stuffed my pain away because, you know, that's what we do. But when I was about 35, things started to shift for me. And then when I was 39, I had a really tragic loss in my life. And I think that was the one thing that shifted me in saying, okay, now's the time. This is where the rubber meets the road for you. And this is when you need to intentionally pursue healing. Because unless you intentionally pursue healing, it's just not going to happen.
I agree. And I think a lot of people will relate with losing someone and shifting completely. It happened to me when my dad passed away. At some point, I was like, okay, stop wasting your time. Now has to happen. It's that urgency that you start to feel, because you realize that everything changes in your life, your perception, your priorities. You suddenly faced with something that it's real. It's not maybe will happen to someone else, that just happened to you.
It's like that moment, that dividing line in your life where you go, I remember who I was and what I was doing before this event, and now everything's different after this event. It really does become that dividing line. And for me, it was definitely that.
So what caught your attention when you started reading the book that you mentioned earlier? Because you know, family constellation is a big topic, and doing hypnotherapy is also a big topic. What exactly was that thing that you were like, this really resonates with me, I should investigate more?
So it's interesting, because that conversation actually had started a couple of years before. I was invited to participate in because I'm also a writer, and I love to write. I've written blogs for years, and I knew a woman who was putting together an anthology, and it was about the event or the relationship or the thing in your life that really strengthened you. And I wrote a piece called Mitochondrial Semantics. It's complicated. And our mitochondrial DNA are what's tied to our mother. And so it was really about the relationship that I had with my mother, and the ways that I tried to avoid what I inherited from her. And so it was really about the ways that I tried to run from the legacy of mothering that I experienced with her. And the more that I tried to run from it, the more that I was pushed into it with my own children. Because if you think about it, I was a foster kid. My mom didn't raise me. When I split from my ex-husband, I didn't have my children with me. And so there's this, you know, generational, and knowing what I know now in family mapping and really putting together the patterns of a family, that reality had been in my family for a long time. It didn't just start with me. It didn't start with my mother. It actually crossed over to my father's line. So there's this whole history of separation of children from their mother. And so that experience led me down this desire to learn, how do we heal our family karma? How do we heal the emotional legacy that we carry from mother to child? And what does that look like? And so I happened upon this book, and I was scrolling through Instagram one day, and one of my, somebody that I follow on Instagram posted that book, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me read this. And I remember talking to my sister, who is, you know, she's pretty woo-woo herself. And I was like, is there like any, you know, woo-woo ways that we could heal this? Like, what is it? Are there rituals? Are there things that we can do? And she's like, I don't know. I think it's just our destiny. You know, I have no clue. But I wasn't satisfied with that answer. And I didn't want her to be satisfied with that answer either. And I was like, you know what? I think that we can work this. So it just set me on a journey. So I got that book, I started to read it, and then I put it down. I started my hypnosis practice, and part of that practice was a podcast that I started called The Healing Toolbox. And I only did one series because I just wanted to dedicate my time to building my practice. And, sometimes, as you know, like you got to figure out what it is that you want to focus on, right? So my podcast was one of those things that I stopped doing so that I could really hone in on what I really wanted to do, which was hold space for clients. But I came across, I was looking for guests, and a person by the name, or a woman by the name of Joanna Lynn, reached out to me, and we booked her to come on my show. And she happened to be a student of Mark Wolin. And so she learned family mapping and constellation therapy from Mark and a couple other constellators. And she had been in the business for about 10 years, and she ran an organization called the Family Imprint Institute. And so I don't even think we were halfway through our consultation call about her coming on the podcast where I was like, how do I sign up for this? This is the missing piece. And it just instantly spoke to me. And her training program is a year, and my life has been changed, like in ways that I couldn't even imagine. It's uncovered those things that were hidden. It has put together and connected the dots to things that I never would have been able to do. And because this is an energetic based practice that really works on uncovering the hidden narratives that run underneath our lives and the trauma connected to it that sits in the body, because we're able to, and I have tools and learn tools to move that trauma out of the body through energy work, through constellation work, through, taking that inner story and bringing it out. As you know how, constellations are. Yeah. And I'm not sure what type of constellations you've been into, but most people have experienced what's called traditional constellations. The type of constellation work through that we learned from the constellation line through Mark's tradition really is about the language that we use and how that language sits in our body. And so and for me, I do some group work, but a lot of my work is with just one person.
Right.
So we use different things to represent, mom, dad, the illness, the situation. And it's just a very to the point, very direct process of family constellations to get right to the heart of the trauma, right to the heart of the story, so that we can pluck that root out. And then through neuroplasticity, through hypnosis, through really shifting that energy verbally, it sets a new story in the body that allows you to shift the way that you orient to the world. So it's almost like we're rebuilding a new foundation internally about the way, and for me specifically with mother wound healing, about the way that you hold the story of how you and your mother's relationship sits in your body. And that's the key piece to it, because we can talk about it all day long. I had been talking about my trauma for years. But it wasn't until I put the body piece and the somatic piece together and really understood the facts of the family and the map and the way that this trauma had epigenetically traveled down from generation to generation until it culminated in me, did I realize the awesome power that I held within my body to stop this on a generational level. And so stepping into that place was transformational to me.
Yeah.
And so the work that I do with my clients is about not just their personal healing.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Don't get that far.
Okay.
Because I know what family constellations are. I have done it myself. I have a friend that does it. So oftentimes we do it with other people, and I know what that has done for me and how powerful that was. But I'd love for you to explain a little bit more what it is when you do it with a group or when you do it one by one, because I know when you use object it might be a little bit different, but still you still get the same result, and you understand a little bit more about you and your family and a lot of things that you carry on that you might not even realize they are attached to it. Because I remember the first time I did it was, I'm having issues in my career. and I'm like, what? So
I would have never connected those dots. What?
How is that possible?
So I think it might be helpful to explain the three tools in a little bit more detail so we can talk about how they fit together. Okay, so a couple of key concepts before I get started in that. Every family operates within what's called a morphogenetic field or an energy field. And all of the stories within that family reside within that energy field. Okay. The next thing that I want people to understand is epigenetics. And in the very simplest form, or simplest explanation, is epigenetics are gene expressions that are passed down from generation to generation based on the experience of the ancestor. And so if my mom, right, experienced, and this is a true story, if my mom experienced life as a child as an alcoholic, or her mother was an alcoholic and all the trauma that came with that, then she was created and it created gene expressions that were passed down to me that helped me. And it might be why I coped a little bit better than she did, right? Because she was, my grandma was an alcoholic. My mom developed gene expressions that helped her, that said, this is a dangerous situation. This is not healthy for us. Let me create these gene expressions in my body to help me cope with this. She wasn't able to cope with it, but passed those genes down to me that helped me cope a little bit better with her addiction. And so that's like a really good, that's how epigenetics works, right? It's this preparation that is passed down from person to person to help them cope with the trauma that was experienced in the prior generation. So those two things, right, need to understand. So the first tool that I use is family mapping, and family mapping uses the core language approach to examine and really create a family map of where your core trauma originated within your family system. And so there's a very specific way that I question my clients. There's very specific words that I'm looking for. I'm looking for words that hold resonance, that kind of seem out of place, that don't fit within the life of the person, that help me put the pieces together about where that core issue and that core trauma sits. Because a person will come into me and say, so I'm having issues in my relationship and I feel like I'm always walked over. Like my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my partner always walks over me. And I need to figure out like how to stop this in my life because I'm constantly feeling invalidated and I just feel like nobody sees me. Right. So some of those words that I constantly feel invalidated, nobody sees me, they start to give me clues. And then I ask further questions and I, realize that, and specifically through the lens of mother wound, I'm looking up the maternal line really to see where that complaint, where that core trauma, like where does it live within the family system? And then we move in, once we have all of that, so we've got the facts of the family, sometimes that just by itself is super powerful because you're able to put context to this story that you've been holding internally forever. And you don't know why nobody ever sees you and why you feel invisible to everybody. But now you've got this systemic view of your family and what, how that lays differently within a lot of people is that you've been holding this trauma solely by yourself. Now you can see the distribution of it through the family, and all of a sudden you don't feel so alone.
And you also understand your family a little bit better, and
absolutely,
and just that understanding shifts the way you react and respond to them.
Yeah, no, completely. It does. Because all of a sudden you have an understanding about why mom is the way she was. And you have an understanding about her relationship with her mom and how that affected the way that she stepped into motherhood with you. And so these things, and you start to see the domino effect of these traumas, whether they're cultural traumas, environmental traumas, wars, there's so many things that can affect why our mothers and our mothers and our ancestors have experienced what we initially or ultimately ended up inheriting. And what does not get resolved, it just gets transferred down to the next generation, just gets passed down. So then family constellations take that story that we've gathered in the map and that you hold internally, and it brings it out into an experiential setting. And so we will have conversations within this energy field, right, that shift back what does not belong to you, because some of what you might be carrying is yours, but a lot of it probably is not. And so what doesn't belong to you, we get to shift back to the family that, to the family member and where it originated. And so what that might look like is you having a conversation with mom that says, when I was young, you had such a great emotional need. And I felt that it was my job to take care of you so that I could be close to you. But it became too much for me. And so I'm going to leave your fate with you, Mom. And I'm going to allow you to carry your fate. And I'm going to go back over here. And I'm going to leave you over here. And I'm going to separate our fate so that I can walk forward in my own path. And there's something that happens in the body when you get to have this conversation with Mom. Sorry. So there's something that happens in the relationship with Mom when you are able to have a conversation that you didn't even know needed to be had, right? You didn't have the words. You didn't know where the trauma was held. You didn't know where it originated in the family. And you couldn't really connect the dots to why you were feeling the way that you were feeling. And so in that instance where, you know, the client comes to me and she says, I just feel like I'm walked over and I feel like nobody has seen me. Well, she has allowed herself to really be enveloped in her mother, and she's disappeared into that relationship. And so of course nobody's going to see her, because what she's learned is that you disappear into relationships in order to be loved and seen and honored. Right.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we start to shift the energy that, that created that. And then there are moments within the constellation where we may switch spaces, and I put the daughter in the place of the mother, and I put the mother in the place of the daughter, and we shift places to create compassion, to create to start to really build a new story that really is about why Mom maybe needed or showed up in the way that she did into motherhood. And so it's not about like codependency or you having to make excuses for Mom. It's about building this bridge of compassion that allows you to experience each other as adults and not through the eyes of the wounded child that you are.
Yeah.
Because when you do not have, when you have an unresolved mother wound, every interaction that you have with Mom and every interaction that you have really in the world is through the eyes of that little girl who didn't get her needs met.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly clawing for those needs to get met. And it shows up everywhere.
Yeah,
Everywhere.
absolutely. Yeah. In everything. And that's one thing that I want to highlight, because it happens to me even with my clients, and they're like, oh, I remember I had a problem. Like, let's work on your inner child healing, because there is something there that hasn't met your need. And so that's why I asked my client, I talked to my client about inner child healing, because when you're wounded as a child, because maybe your parents weren't there, they couldn't take care of you in the way you needed, then everything that hasn't been resolved comes back to you, either in your career, in your relationships, or as you said. So it's extremely important to look back at the very beginning of your life and how what happened and why.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Which kind of ties into the next piece of this is now that you understand the system, you've worked it out energetically. How do you integrate that change then into your life? How do you integrate that new story? One of the tools that I use is hypnosis. And so while we've dealt with the family system, hypnosis, through mapping and constellations, hypnosis really helps you deal and release the emotional triggers, the connections that you have to that story that you are holding. And so we start to do that subconscious personal work around the issues that you are presenting. And then part of that also is teaching and sharing with clients how to do that inner child work. How do you shift that relationship with Mom so that you're not expecting her to meet the needs that she frankly will probably never meet? Yeah. And how do you then become the mother of the little girl inside of you? And so that really is the final piece about what it looks like to heal the mother wound. How do you reparent and how do you honor and see and treasure and, make a safe place for that little girl in you that still lives there and will always live there?
Yeah.
How do you integrate her into your life now that you are operating as the adult self and not through the eyes of the child self?
Yeah, and this last bit is the most powerful, I feel, because once you get to that stage, and I can speak by experience because this is what happened to me last year. But once you stop thinking that your mom should behave in a certain way, and you just take back your power, that's how I say it, then all of a sudden you feel free in a way you've never felt before, and things start to shift. And maybe you've been working on yourself and on your life, whatever it is that you've been working on, and for whatever reason there is always that something that doesn't happen quite in the right way, or you don't really get to the point you want to get so deeply. But once you do that, everything shifts, but you become so relaxed and peaceful in a way
Mhm.
that you couldn't be before. And it's just amazing. The relationship with your mom shifts. And it's just because, as you said, you said mother yourself and your inner child, and it's just a complete different way of being.
Yeah. Well, when you think about energetically what happens to the body, right? So we are wounded by our mother and we hold that wound in our body. And
Mm.
sometimes it's really subconscious. You don't even know that you're holding it. You just know
Yeah.
that you and your mom have this rift. But the minute that you start to work through that and you start to resolve that energetically, it's like your soul just opens up. And so, whereas before you were this little girl fighting the world, you don't have those fists up anymore, and your soul actually opens up and starts to receive everything that you have been trying to manifest.
Mm.
It's like when you talk about manifestation, and as a metaphysical minister, manifestation is kind of my
Yeah.
jam, right? We work in the universal laws. So when we talk about the law of resonance,
Mm.
and really what that means is that the energy in which we show up to the world is the energy that we're going to be able to receive the world, and the world
Yeah.
will receive us. And so if we're stepping up into the world in this energetic fight with everybody, then where's the opening for those good things to come in? Where's the opening for those things that are going to take you and help you meet your highest self?
Yeah.
You don't have the space within you, right? So the minute that you actually start to understand these core wounds that live within you, start to work them out of your body, that fight just isn't there anymore. And energetically, it's like your soul just opens up. And it's like you just go to the world. All right, here I am. I'm ready. But you couldn't
Yeah.
do that before because you had
Yeah.
walls and you had blockades to everything that you
Yeah.
were trying to manifest. And so it's why I think, mother wound healing really is the core,
Mm.
because it is the core way that you learn to receive the world.
Yeah.
And so in coming back to the example I just gave, if the core way that you're receiving the world is shut off, there's no space for you to let anything in. Yeah.
That's right. I have a question for you, because you mentioned a lot of like kind of dysfunctional childhood or situations where you kind of knew you didn't get what you needed
Yeah.
growing up. Maybe not because you had a traumatic experience like yours, but even just, knowing, fighting with your mom, like
Sure.
everybody says, that's normal. You're always going to do that.
Yeah.
When you meet women that say that they have a very good relationship with their moms,
Mm-hmm.
but there is something still not working, because I see a lot of situations where the daughter becomes a little bit codependent with the mother, because they have this such amazing relationship because they're friends, but there is nothing they do without her mother knowing or telling them their opinion. And they
Mm-hmm.
trust their opinion so much that they take their advice, and maybe they don't listen to themselves, or because they don't want to disappoint. How does that work for you in the kind of
Yeah.
understanding what's going on there?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. And one I actually see a lot, right? So, as parents, as mothers, our job is to raise our children to be independent, autonomous little people that grow into independent, autonomous big people. When I hear if a client comes to me and says, my mother is my best friend and
Mm.
we're so close and I trust her in everything she tells me, and I can't be separated from her. I could never move away from my mom, right? So it's all these things. That too is a mother wound. And here's why. Because there is an order to love, and the order to love is that parents take care of their children. And so if you're looking at it on a sheet of paper, you're going to draw a line for mom here and a line for child here. When the child is elevated to the status of being mom's friend, well, then it's here. And so if love flows down from parent to child, but child is here, where's love flowing? It doesn't flow sideways. It doesn't
Right.
flow sideways to a child, right? So there's a kink in the flow of love. And what often happens in those relationships is that child is never taught how to differentiate between their emotions and mom's emotions. They don't know they often have trouble building their own opinions without having the approval of mom. Oftentimes this can look like, helicopter moms. This can look like, daughters who can't ever, like, they need their mom's approval for everything. And if mom doesn't approve of it, it doesn't happen. really what's happened there, and really this would come out in the genealogram that we do on the family map, because I would really be interested in what mom's relationship with her mom was.
Right.
I would say 8 out of 10 times, mom's relationship with her mom was troubled. And so mom decided, well, I'm going to be a different kind of mom to my child, and I am going to do A, B, C, and D, right? And A, B, C, and D are really about getting mom's needs met and not about teaching that child to be an autonomous, independent person. And so where we work with that is what this is often called in the work that I do is called emerge. And so we really start to separate the boundaries of the daughter to the mother. So we do a lot of meditation around visualizing boundaries, around identifying what is yours and what is mom's. And so, once we understand the facts of the family, we can work that out in constellation. And then the homework becomes living within those boundaries and establishing those boundaries. Right. Yeah, it's that's a really common question, because I still do work with people who absolutely love and adore their moms. You should absolutely love and adore your mom. I love those kinds of relationships and those kinds of clients, because they're not walking in with the deep trauma, but what they are walking in with is a deep lack of sense of self.
Yeah. And the reason why I asked you is because I see also myself, I see a lot of this, and sometimes, and I speak about boundaries as well. But the thing is that they do not see the problem, because there isn't a trauma. There isn't something that they feel they need to heal. There isn't what they feel is a wound, because maybe their friends can tell you their story and how they fought with their mom and whatever situation, but because it always has been so nice and so beautiful, it doesn't feel like that is a problem as well that needs to be resolved in a different way, of course. But you have to remember that you are you and your mom is your mom, and establish a different kind of relationship, even if it stays on the same level of thinking with you friends, but everybody has their own role in the family.
Sometimes how that, when a client comes to me, it's never for that. They're not going to say, they're like, yeah, I know you do mother wound healing. And I don't know, I've had a really close relationship with my mother, but I'm having problems in my marriage because my mom is just too involved. Right? Or I don't have my confidence is really lacking. Right? Because their confidence really comes from their mom. And if they've done anything that mom doesn't approve of, well, all of a sudden that just knocks down the level of confidence that they have, instead of being taught as a child, hey, make your choices, experiment, take chances, right? They learn to act according to what mom's going to approve of, and it's really difficult to build an autonomous life that is free and that is, that allows you to explore and experience the world when you are tied to what would mom say about this. And no knock to mom. I think one of the questions that I get often is, well, why do we have to blame everything on mom? Right. And that is, I think that's the reasonable assumption of this work, right? Because it's called mother wound wounding, and we talk a lot about the ways that your mom did or didn't mother you. But really what we're talking about is the system that raised the women in your family, and how to heal that. And so I am a daughter, but I'm also a mother, right? So I'm a daughter to a woman who had a mother wound, and I am a mother to a daughter with a mother wound. And so how do we systemically heal this with all the women in our family? So it's like mom is just the entry point to the story. That's all she is. And then from there, we kind of branch out and see where it goes. And once we heal that core relationship, that break in the bond with mom, then it opens up healing for all the other ways that relationship has manifested in our lives.
And there is another thing that while you were talking came up to me, because I remember the taking responsibility for what it's not yours, taking responsibility and behaving in a way that it's not who you're supposed to be. So taking responsibility maybe for your mom and doing things for your mom, either out of guilt because maybe the relationship has been rocky, or because you love her so much and your relationship is so amazing, in the same way, but doing things that you're really not supposed to be doing because as you said, you should be the daughter and your mom should behave and be the mother, and therefore have two separate roles.
So in constellation work, there's what's called the orders of love, right? And I talked a little bit about it, where parents come first and then the children. When you elevate yourself to caretaker of the parent, all of a sudden you become the big one, where really they should be the big one, you should be the little one, right? When you elevate yourself to the big one, you do it out of love. You do it out of loyalty. You do it out of like even these unconscious loyalties that you build with parents. But really at the core of it, if we're talking about the framework and the orders of love, it is incredibly disrespectful to your parents to carry their fate. Because what you're telling them is, I don't think you're capable of managing this on your own. And you need me to rescue you so that you can cope in life. And some of that may very well be true. Your mom really may not be able to handle her life, but guess what? It's her fate to carry, not yours. And so you can encourage mom, you can love mom, but you can't carry it for her. And oftentimes, so many of our life issues come from us carrying the fate of our parent.
Yeah, this is a big topic.
And how can you carry your fate when you're carrying your parents' fate? You can't carry both. Exactly. And so that's where the rift starts to come, and that's where the issues start to develop in your life.
I think this is a big topic, and it's something that I learned myself doing constellation and stuff, but it's something that I see through the people that I meet, not necessarily my clients, but it's something that you see so much where you're like, no. And what I feel it's most difficult is that you feel you have to. You feel guilty if you don't, but then it's that realization and then understanding that everybody has to carry their life as it is, and sometimes it's hard.
It is.
But that's life.
That guilt and that draw, really, if we think about it in the context of constellation work, is really the body memory of the core trauma, the body memory of when you were a little girl, and the only way that you would get love and connection to mom is when you cared for her, or when you picked up the fate of her in some way. And so, understanding that piece of it helps to step away from it a little bit and go, okay. Bert Hellinger, who's a founder of constellation work, I think it was him that said, feel guilty, but have a good life. You can't really escape guilt. It's something that you're always going to feel. But what can you do in honor of your mom, or in honor of, the ways that she had difficulties carrying her fate, or in honor of the struggles that you had in relationship? You honor her by doing for yourself what she couldn't, or doing for yourself what she couldn't do for herself. So, there are ways that you can honor mom in that way, but you do ultimately have to leave the fate of your parents with your parents.
Okay. Wow. This is such an amazing conversation.
I'm glad. It's going really well. I like it.
I love those topics, and I love to learn more, but we kind of need to wrap up. So,
I know we could talk for hours.
I know. I get caught up with all this conversation, and I'm just really fascinated by the topic, and I feel that it's so empowering once you learn, and the way it happens, you shift your relationship, you shift the way you believe it, you think about yourself. It's such a beautiful way to turn your life around, whatever it is that you're looking for to change. I could talk about it forever. But the last two things that I'd like for you to share with us is where we can find you if you want to work with you, and another advice for the women watching us, based on your experience and what you do, one thing that you might want to share with us.
Okay. Okay, so you can find me. My website is Rev Shelle, so REV as short for Reverend, so Rev Shelle, CHELLE.com. All my contact information is on there. I've got a bunch of videos that you can watch about the work that I do. I've written a few pieces about it. And so you can find me there. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm probably more active on Instagram these days than I am on Facebook. So you can find me there also at Rev Shelle. I have lots of posts about mother wound healing, and even lately I've done this whole series about how the mother wound personally showed up for me as a child, and how it's manifested in my life. And those tend to be really popular, and people, you know, are like, I didn't even think about that. So it's starting to connect the dots for some folks. So you know, Instagram is, I think it's my happy place right now. It's also the safe place. Like, I don't have a lot of like junk that you get on other social media channels right now. I have a really carefully curated Instagram feed. So that's where you can find me. You can also book free consultations with me if you are drawn, or something I've said today has really, you know, resonated with you. I have a free consultation you can book right online, and we'll sit down and we'll talk for about 20 minutes about what issue is presenting in your life and whether or not this work is right for you, whether I'm the right person to work with, and, you know, we can all talk about that. Advice. So much of this work is body based. And it is about your connection between your mind and your body. And some of us have those connections, and some of us are like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, if I ask somebody, you know, where are you feeling what I've just said in your body? Because chances are, as we were talking today, people who are listening, something's going to resonate, and they're going to go, oh, and they're going to feel it in your body. So a really good tool that I have for people who may be interested in this work and want to understand maybe that more mind-body connection is I have a video on my site called Becoming Body Aware, and it walks you through some exercises that help you do some breath connections, help you to, what does it mean to send compassion to your heart? What does it mean to feel intuitively how this statement about your mother wound, where that might be sitting in your body? So I put together a video about getting you, you know, maybe through that process and giving you a little bit more understanding about how you can make that mind-body connection in this mother wound work. Also on my blog, there is a written piece that accompanies that has about 11 different exercises that connect your mother wound to your body. And so if anyone's interested, that would be a really good tool. Even if we don't work together, it's a great tool to start to understand how your mind and your body connect, and how to really listen intuitively to your body in the ways that it can talk to you about the trauma that you hold. And so that would be my my suggestion.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle. And please do get in touch with her or check her blog. And it's just so important. And I feel this is something every woman should be doing to really help yourself feel free and feel yourself again, and go for the path that you're supposed to go for, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One more thing I want to say, I think that every person is like you were born with the ability to exist and to thrive in this life, and your body is incredibly capable of healing the trauma that lives within it. And there's no trauma greater than your ability to heal it. There just isn't. So you just have to learn how to trust your body, how to listen to it, and how to trust your ability to heal.
Amen to that.
Amen. Yeah.
Oh my God, Michelle, thank you so much for being on my show today. It's been such an amazing conversation, and it's been a pleasure for me to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you creating the space for me to have it, and I appreciate the voice that you are bringing out into the world, and you know, helping women find that intuitive connection for themselves, because that really is the way that we get to that next level of healing, is by listening to ourselves.
Yeah, we
have all the wisdom.
Yeah, it's about time we rise up. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree. Absolutely.
Right. Perfect.
So
thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye. And thank you everybody for watching and listening. I hope you liked this episode, and I hope you found some interesting information for you. And if you want to get in touch with Michelle, please do so. But please also know that I do offer a free discovery call if you feel like you are in a moment where you want to change your life. Maybe after this episode you do, and you feel like you want to do more and find the career you love. The discovery call will give you, we will talk about your situation and where you want to go. And if you don't know what that is, it doesn't matter. We will have a lot of clarity once you finish, and you will come out of the call with knowing exactly where you at, where you could go, and a lot of clarity and less confusion, and you will feel inspired to take the next step. If you don't want to book the call, I also have a free guide which is called 7 Ways to Use Your Intuition to Feel More Confident in Your Career. And maybe that could be a tool for you now when you're still figuring out what is it that is going on. And you have exercises and a couple of questions that will help you to learn more about you and tune into your intuition a little bit more. Well, thank you so much again for watching and listening. Please don't forget to subscribe, share, and I will see you next week. Thank you. Bye.
Your future's at the door.